Out of academia into the West, PowerPoints with the speed of light, and an ironic and self-mocking hi-oh silver. Yes, the lone professor strikes again. All right, so I'm going to do another of my training PowerPoints for you today. It's Friday, April the 10th, and we're pretty much ready to go with that. So forward into the past. All right, what is lean? Well, of course, since you've just watched my 6S presentation, you should know that already. Why lean? Also, lean manufacturing, lean production. We went over this slide already. Okay, but lean culture, this is a slide we didn't have in the 6S presentation. We're always trying to change the culture of the organization that we're working with. So we want to shape that culture. First of all, people have to be willing to change. We have to communicate a vision of what we are changing to. And we have to build the trust with workers, with customers, and suppliers. Right? We're trying to empower and motivate people to get into that lean culture. And sometimes that means we do a lean event that actually fails. But we should still go and congratulate everyone, thank them so much for giving it a shot. Because if we say, oh, you guys were stupid, you shouldn't have done that, what is going to be the consequence? No one is going to stick their neck out in the future. And we always support action. All right, so process at a glance. I learned this with a very experienced lean facilitator way back in the day, like 2004, maybe 2003. Process at a glance is where we build a chart that shows every part of the process so that we can improve. All right, so when do we use process at a glance? Well, first of all, it's good for very short, focused lean events. We would not use process at a glance for how we build a car from beginning to end. We want a short, frequently repeated process. Who do we want to be involved? The production personnel that use the process, the supervisor of that area, the expediter for the area, maybe even the supplier for the area. Now, a lot of times I've worked with people where they say, oh, my production personnel, they're too busy, they can't be in the lean event. Well, whatever we do without those people is not going to work. They need to be there. They are the experts. All right, so here I have made a simple process at a chart. And my example is making tea. All right, so this is something that is fairly simple, everyone can understand. When we make a process at a chart, what are we looking for? We want a description of the steps. We want to know what materials have to be used at each step. we want to know what machines or tools or equipment need to be used in each step, and a demonstration of what are we doing if it's a difficult or likely to be not understood step, right? So here you see I'm peeling off the little safety ring on the water bottle. Here I'm putting water into the coffee machine. Here I'm showing that you have to push the button in order to get it started. And over here I'm showing putting in the tea and the, well, just the tea at this point. All right, so now I'm up to the 8th step. Oh, one thing I didn't show you before, how long in seconds does each part of the process take? Now you'll notice that I labeled this one as 15 minutes and this one as 1 hour, but both of those are machine process time. Okay, all the manual cycle time parts I have labeled in seconds. And I'll show you the work measurement document as we go along. All right, so here we're putting the sweet and low in the bottle, an illustration, not a very good one, of doing that. The machine is processing. We discard the tea supply wrappers. Then we put the hot water into the bottle. We press the bottle so that there's a meniscus and then put on the cap. And we put it in the freezer. Boy, my freezer today looks a lot more jammed up than that. And, oh, there we go. I was very worried there for a second. All right, so here is the work measurement standard for making the tea in that manner. Okay, so I've got the analyst, the date, the time, and right, and one thing I put in is what is the distance that has to be traveled to make each of these things happen, right? So you can see that there are 13 steps of manual cycle time. There are 2 steps of machine process time, and I list the manual cycle time ends up being 4 minutes and 25 seconds, right? And here's where I've added all those up using Excel to get to that point. All right, but knowing what the total process time is also important as knowing the manual cycle time. All right, and manual cycle time. All right, work measurement. Well, I went over work measurement in the 6S video that you should have just looked at. So let's skip lightly over that. Here is a slide that I need to put in the 6S presentation. Let me emphasize again, use video, right? If it's a short process, you can use your phone to record, but video is cheap. It's not like when my father was taking Super 8 movies. Super 8 was 8mm film. It occurred to me y'all might not know that. We have phones, we have cameras that can take these videos. The video can be reviewed over and over again, and we can do clips of it to show potential problems or how a particular part of a process is done. You can video yourself to improve your work. Well, obviously I'm videoing myself now. And we can get everyone together and brainstorm our improvements while we're watching the video. When we do this, we want to emphasize that this is not to embarrass the workers, that we might use the videos but only for improvement or training. Never, ever, ever make a blooper reel that you show at the Christmas party or whatever. Never, never, never. That is a sure way to lose cooperation of the workers. Okay, and get the workers to watch the video with you for improvements. Again, let me emphasize that, right? If they see, sometimes if you see yourself as others see you, that gives you ideas that you wouldn't have had just doing the process. We always want to be framing the hands and body postures, not the faces, right? We're not making a Julia Roberts movie. We are making a work measurement video. Always count the steps that are taken during the process. You saw on the work measurement standard for making tea that I had put in how far I had to walk in each step. We multiply the steps by 2.5 or 30 inches to get the number of feet walked. And sometimes when we study, we see an incredible number of feet walked. All right, so our step one is always talk with the operators. Talk to the operators about the process, the steps to do the process, the steps to get the material to do the process, what is the information they need in that process, what are the problems that occur in the process? Is it an occasional problem or is it always a problem? Talk about the tools they need, whether any tools are broken or they're not the correct tool, or any tools that have been brought from home. That happens more often than you would think. All right, so we've talked to the operator about the process. Now we're observing the process, and we're going to video the process happening. So all the way from getting materials and supplies through all of the steps to complete the process. The bench work that has to be done, the machine work that has to be done, does it need an inspection where we actually have to take it to an inspector? The paperwork that has to be completed is also part of the process. All the way from getting the materials and supplies to finishing and delivering the product, we want to observe. All right, so we need to keep in mind what are the 5 M's of a process. What is the manpower needed. Is it one person? Is it two people? Is it a whole team that are needed for this process? What are the machines that are needed? Just the necessary equipment. Don't worry about the unnecessary equipment. What are the materials that are used in the process? So we want to look at all the materials and the supplies. What is the method we use in the process, right? We're looking for consistent, standardized work in the process, right? If they're doing it a different way every time, that's already a problem. And we want to measure any place where we might want to change the process. All right. All right, so then we've talked to the operator about the process, we've observed the process and videoed. Now we're going to break the process down into elements. In other words, an element is a discrete part of the process. So, for example, the operator has to leave their workbench and walk over and get something from a cabinet and bring it back. All right, I would call that one step of the process. Right? The operator takes 3 screws and they have to put them into the assembly and tighten them. I would call that one part of the process. Now, depending on how far you want to break down, there are certainly, you could certainly break that down into, I reach, I get a screw, I put it in place, I screw it in as 3 different parts of the process. Right, but when we're doing lean, we usually don't need to break down that far. We also want to know what are the times it takes to do those elements. If we're using a digitized video, often that's easy because we can look at the running count on it to know how much time. All right, make sure all the needed work for the process is included. Sometimes you aren't going to be able to observe part of the process, right? At this point, I would take this to such and such machine and get this done, but the machine's broken. In that case, you ask for an estimate of the amount of time, and then you pick up with filming a part or an assembly that has already gone through that machine and do the rest of the process. All right, well, bloody hell. We're not going to be able to do the exercise. All right, so spaghetti charts. Right, you've seen this one before, but I believe in the next slide. Okay, because we've seen this today, I'm going to go ahead and go to the next. All right, so then I did the operator's movement by itself, which includes coming back to the start position. And I estimated that as 163 feet of travel. We can also do just the product movement, which I'm doing here. estimating that at 138 feet. Okay, after the improvement, you'll notice I've rearranged the workstation. It's been reduced in size. No steps are eliminated, but this goes with that changing the sequence of steps that I talked to you about. Okay, so instead of the operator standing and watching the lathe work or watching the cleaning machine work, they put the part in the lathe or in the cleaning machine and start it, and then they go on to the next step with the one they've taken out of the lathe or the cleaning machine. Okay, the toolbox, parts cabinet, and supplies cabinet have been eliminated. All right, so here we go, creating the new spaghetti chart. All right, so the operator is moving around, getting some things done here. He goes to the cleaning machine. He puts the finished part on the outgoing Kanban. The water strider comes through and picks it up. Bob's your uncle. He goes back to status quo ante. And Bob's your uncle. You can see how much cleaner and easier this is. Right here, we're looking at the worker flow, which has been reduced to a quarter of what it used to be. And here we're looking at the product flow, which has been, I'm going to call it a quarter of what it used to be as well. All right, the spaghetti chart exercise, obviously we can't do that. All right, so 6S, since we just went through that presentation, this will be a super fast running through that. Standard work, all right, our visual management. All right, we usually have a visual management exercise with this as well. Total productive maintenance we talked about. All right, so we're back to our circle of 4 basic Kaizen events. Right? Our standard work is what we are looking to fix in a process at a glance event. All right? We have to remember our key principle of value and what is value added and what is non-value added. Well, customer service, value added, order entry, assembly, painting, cleaning, but never, ever, ever rework. And non-value added, incomplete information, entering information in 2 places, waiting, inspection, transportation, inventory, searching, rework. All right, here's our famous downtime paradigm. Since we just went through 6S, we won't go through it again. Remember, waste always comes disguised as honest work that has to be done. Womack and Jones, in their book Lean Thinking, say that if a factory has been operating for a long time without being leaned, 95% of the work done there is probably waste. The best lean companies still have 20 to 30%. So that is actually the estimate of Toyota about their own leanness. We want to always be thinking about reducing or eliminating waste, right? Pardon me. Some things are non-value added but necessary. Those have to be retained. Okay, so we start with our work measurement standard. And here's one that I made up about, well, I didn't make it up. I actually, did this work measurement standard on myself for making the bed. I actually have worked on that an awful lot as something very accessible to do. All right? So I've got that work measurement standard. You would get that from your observations of the process. I build a new process with a process at a glance chart, right? So in this case, I'm going through the entire cycle of what happens to the linens, right? It's not just putting them on the bed, it's how do you accomplish getting them through the whole process. When you take the sheets off the bed, what happens to them? All right, ordinarily there would be a fourth exercise, and this goes back to our lean is common sense slide, and thanks to John Ayala, who was my boss when I worked for the Texas Engineering Experiment Station. He gave me permission to use some of this material that I had created while working there. My partner, Bo Creek, my spiritual advisor, and Harlan Womble, my friend, who was lending me part of his law office to work in when I put this together. All right, so are there any questions? Well, of course there are going to be questions. Feel free to contact me by email about what questions there are, or give me a call. All right, well, I'm going to say that concludes our third, what has turned out to be our third presentation of the Friday, April 10th class, and your assignment, which I will put in your Moodle, will be to create a work measurement chart and a process at a glance chart. Okay, but something very simple, a very, very short process. All right, well, that concludes today's class. Stay safe, and when the fields are white with daisies, we'll meet again.